Question: how do a talented filmmaker, a seasoned cast, the best trained visual effects artists in the world, and $250 million come together to make this? Peter Jackson's return to Middle-earth was problematic. I mean, everyone knows this. From its rushed production to its awkward 48-frame photography and its bloated storytelling, a lot has been said about this franchise. In fact, the articles covering this drama would be a longer read than The Silmarillion. However, I was always rooting for this trilogy, whether it be Martin Freeman's performance, the rare moments of technical beauty, or the now iconic take on Smaug. There was always enough to keep me invested in this series. Well, at least until this.
Not every man's brave enough to wear a corset.
The Battle of the Five Armies, the titular set piece to the third film, was in many ways the culmination of the problems that plagued the series. The action was more bloated than ever. The point of view is scattered, bouncing around from character to character with little to no narrative cohesion, and the most crucial and beloved of characters gets completely lost in the chaos. The battle is very much the bane of the series' existence. It is both the cause of the series split into 3 movies, and the sour note that nullifies the 2 films that came before. But even with this baggage, I don't think it needed to end this way, as in this battle are dozens of missed opportunities. The failure of this film directly contrasts with Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, whose highlights include the greatest battles in modern action cinema. Now, the battles in The Lord of the Rings share the same DNA as The Hobbit. After all, a lot of the ideas in The Hobbit would be repurposed and recycled for The Lord of the Rings. You have a mad king hiding in his castle against a hopeless siege. You have the death of a tragic hero, giving them one last moment of redemption. And of course, you have the Eagles gloriously saving the day. It got me thinking, why does one work and the other doesn't? You know, besides the whole overuse of digital effects and the other problems people have with these movies. So in this 2-part series, we're going to discuss action filmmaking, large-scale battle storytelling, and where The Hobbit missed the mark. What is the purpose of a cinematic battle, besides the obvious spectacle or the plot threads that lead to it? I believe that a battle serves as a catalyst for story and character arcs. As a storyteller, it's very fun to put characters with different backgrounds and objectives into the same conflict. It's a playground for character interaction. So for instance, if 2 characters have a long-running rivalry or unresolved baggage, they will meet on the battlefield.
Final count, 42.
However they clash or cooperate, this battle should mark a turning point or climax in said relationship. By design, battles appear at the end of stories, as characters are killed and these unresolved plotlines are put to rest. The Battle of the Five Armies finds itself in this position. After 2 films of adventure getting to the mountain, the 3rd film centers on the sacrifices made to protect it. The Lonely Mountain is at the heart of this film, from its strategic location to the wealth inside, and its effect on those who live inside it. The importance of the mountain to the themes and plot of the film should be reflected in its importance to the battle, which leads to my first key topic. Perhaps the most important element when it comes to staging a cinematic battle is the arena, from where you place your characters to how the locations connect to one another and the frames of reference to ground us in the action. The location also creates the rules of engagement. Where you fight determines what you fight for. In this regard, Helm's Deep remains the holy grail of the entire series. By making the arena small and compact, the battle is given a strong sense of clarity. For one, every action beat takes place on or around the castle, keeping things simple, and the design of the castle adds to this simplicity. You can break the castle down into 3 distinct parts. You have the wall where the men and elves fend off the attacking Uruk-hai, you have the curved causeway that leads to the front gate, and you have this tall tower which serves as a weenie. Now a weenie is a reference to Disneyland, where Walt Disney positioned the Cinderella castle right in the middle of the park, so guests could always orient themselves wherever they were. This tower is cleverly positioned between the other two castle elements, and is the background of dozens of action shots for the same sense of orientation. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Mark Brown and his episode on Uncharted, where he applies this idea to game design. Great stuff. Now, all of this geography and staging is important, but it doesn't mean a thing unless it benefits the themes and characters that inhabit them. While the conflict is of course between good and evil, it also highlights the tension of leadership between Theoden and Aragorn. Both knew this evil was coming, but differed on how to fight it.
I will not risk open war.
Open war is upon you, whether you would risk it or not.
Having been on this journey with Aragorn, we know this evil will not stop, that every moment delay in the battle will only make the enemy stronger. In many ways, Helm's Deep represents passivity, or more specifically the passivity of man, and that simply locking up and waiting for things to blow over is not an adequate solution. You can see these themes represented in the way the battle plays out, as every piece of unbreachable defense is rendered useless by Saruman's technology. They have high walls, well, the enemy built higher ladders. The enemy can't breach through the gate, so they blow a hole in the wall. Beat by beat, the Uruk-hai make ground, and only when the castle is lost do they face the enemy head-on and find their salvation.
Theoden King stands alone. Not alone. Rohirrim!
This is what turns a good battle scene into a great one, when the architecture of the battle not only leads to clear and exciting action, but when said action furthers the themes that the film wants to present. There's a beauty to this simplicity, and I think it's a beauty that the Battle of the Five Armies misses out on. Instead of working on one front, it works on three, with the men and elves dispatching to the city of Dale, and the dwarves taking their final stand at Ravenhill. Now, as an action arena, Ravenhill lends itself to being an interesting setting. There are clear platforms, points of reference, and even some fun environmental hazards, like the large cliffs and frozen ice. But Dale, on the other hand, is a geographical nightmare, as there is no feasible way to communicate the geography of a city. So while in the two towers, the enemy advancing is communicated through a camera pan, in the Battle of the Five Armies, it is communicated with some really sloppy dialogue.
The Orcs have taken Stone Street! The market's overrun!
Geography is so important because it is how we connect individual action beats into something grander, which leads to my next major topic. One thing that bugs me with the Battle of the Five Armies is that there are very few effective action beats. Most of the action in this hour-long sequence consists of various fighting elements of men, elves, and dwarves fighting orcs. There may be a troll or beast that proves hard to kill, but it's still killed off quicker than it's introduced. The real problem is that these action beats are largely inconsequential. They can happen anywhere, at any time, and have little to no connection with one another. There's a complete lack of cause and effect, which is why you center your battle around a clear objective. By setting the Battle of Helm's Deep at Helm's Deep, all of a sudden every beat is given purpose. Instead of just fighting orcs, they're clearing the wall, guarding the castle, or defending the causeway so that the others can board up the gate. Each of these individual beats are crucial to the overall flow of the battle, as they're how we understand how close our heroes are to victory or defeat. But most importantly, it gives our heroes something to do. It's how a hero is made on the battlefield. Let's keep the subject on our heroes, as ultimately it's what these battles are about. As I said before, our heroes get completely lost in this conflict, as Gandalf and Bilbo are inconsequential to its outcome. Even characters who have influence, like Bard, Dane, or Thranduil, are mere drops in the giant crowds of extras and computer-generated armies. This is of course in stark contrast with King Theoden in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Compared to Helm's Deep, where Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli stole the limelight, King Theoden shines on Pelennor Fields. Now, in this battle, Theoden doesn't shine despite the endless crowds of men and orcs, he shines because of them. A lot of weight is put on him as a leader, as he brings many of his men to their certain death. But we don't see their perspectives on the battle, we mainly see his, as he stares down the terrible beasts and foes that face them. Every action of an army stems from the reaction of their leader and the fight-or-flight instincts that inevitably take over. Each action beat starts with one of these reactions, and then we see the echo of this action travel across the crowd. Here the crowd is an extension of the character. A crowd dying isn't tragic, but a crowd who our hero led into battle dying is. It's the synergy of the crowd and the individual. One action becomes 1,000 actions. Put together with a sweeping crane shot, the impact is undeniable. This vocabulary of action is sorely lacking from The Hobbit, as when Thorin takes on Azog in Ravenhill, he does it alone. But Thorin doesn't become a key player until the latter half of the battle, as in the first half, command is split between these three lords. The lord I want to single out is Thranduil, the king of the Woodland Realms, and how his influence in the battle is lessened by Peter Jackson's direction. Let's take a look at the first major action beat of the entire sequence, when the elves join the fight. Not only do we not see Thranduil make this decision, but we never see him engage in battle amidst his fellow soldiers. All of his action beats are him on his own, isolated from his kin. This doesn't just apply to Thranduil, as both Dane and Bard act separately from the armies they command. Even when they do lead their men into battle, as Bard does twice, it has no impact since it's not built around a clear objective. The only real objective throughout the entire battle is that both sides are slowly beating down the other's numbers, which is not how you pace a battle scene. So that begs the question, how do you pace it? So to recap, great battle scenes are built around a geographical location with a sole objective. The battle focuses on 2 to 4 primary characters who hold the power of the scene, having both the skills and army to reach this goal. The battle consists of multiple smaller objectives that, when connected by the geography, form a chain of events that we could easily follow. Now with each of these smaller objectives, there are 2 possible outcomes. Our heroes can achieve this objective, or they fail. This right here is a pendulum swing, a switch from winning to losing for our heroes. Of course, pendulum swings can also go from losing to winning, but the idea remains the same. A change in momentum on the battlefield. Pendulum swings are how battles evolve. It's how you introduce new obstacles that become the set piece's most thrilling moments. The pendulum must always be swinging, both from moment to moment and from scene to scene. Predictably, the Battle of the Five Armies rarely swings the pendulum, which is what happens when your battle has no geographical understanding or clear objectives. Now that's not to say that the filmmakers don't try to swing the pendulum, just that these efforts fail to stick. Take for instance the women and elderly of Laketown deciding to join the fight.
I say we stand with our men in life and in death. Arm yourselves!
The idea is novel. A bunch of unexpected warriors aiding their loved ones in battle, but there is no action beat to center this around. We see the men charge into battle, and so the women and elderly follow. In order for the pendulum to swing, we need to see how they change the battle. What difference does it make by having them there? So ideally, we need to see the men failing or in dire need of help. Then we see the women and elderly make this decision, and finally see how this decision impacts the battle. Obstacle, action, resolution. It's the foundation for any important moment. And when we look at the Battle of the Five Armies, we see how broken these elements are. We have obstacles without actions, and actions without resolutions, leading to a battle that is overall static. However, battles will inevitably have static moments, where the flow of the battle stays the same. You know, it takes a long time to clear a field of orcs. So as a storyteller, you have to build around this redundant material, interweaving the plotlines in a way that brings out the best in one another. In Lord of the Rings, Jackson would often build his action scenes to a clash of characters, ending the scene with the 2 armies colliding. After this, he would cut to other important plot threads, like what the Hobbits are up to at this particular moment. Helm's Deep cleverly cuts exclusively away to Merry and Pippin, whose frustration with the Ents is matched by our frustration to get back to the battle.
How can that be your decision?
Additionally, whole sections of the Battle of Minas Tirith are flat out ignored for the far more important terror that Frodo experiences in Shelob's lair. These battles need to be broken up into digestible tidbits of spectacle, interspersing them with far more intimate moments of the characters we followed throughout this journey. The fact that the battle only cuts back to Thorin while he hides in his castle twice is a mistake. It's his decision that truly matters, and having his major beats occur back to back ultimately just make them feel rushed. The only other way that the battle is broken up is by following the wacky antics of Alfred, and yeah, there's no polite way of saying this. We don't care.
Where is he?
Speaking of breaking things up, I think now would be a good time to mention the things I do like about this battle, as there actually are some high points. While I'm not a fan of how Thranduil was handled in the battle, I do like his decision to retreat. It's a great example of character impacting action, as we totally understand why he would make this decision. More importantly, it has an immediate negative effect on our heroes. There's even a confrontation between him and Tauriel that really works, and this is what I like. More of this. Also, as I hinted at before, I really like the finale on Ravenhill. I like the quiet atmosphere and how the wind whistles over the ice. I like the blue and white color palette that really brings out the characters in the foreground, unlike the murky brown soup that is the rest of the battle. There are character deaths and they mean something, and it's a genuinely good battle scene. Well, most of it. It does run out of steam. Also, I feel towards the final moments, Jackson was far more concerned with the inventive choreography surrounding crumbling environments than any sort of theme or character. And as high as some of these high points are, this is the biggest missed opportunity, as theme can shine just as brightly during the battle scenes more than any other scene of dialogue, which leads to the most important point of all. As I discussed before, what made the Battle of Helm's Deep truly special was how all these topics we have covered, from the geography to the action beats to the flow of the battle, were ultimately in service to the themes dictating the story. It's what turns the battle from being an isolated, awesome set piece to one that complements the story it's in, making it an essential part of the entire trilogy. Theme and character always come first, in every story you will ever see. So with that in mind, what is the theme of The Hobbit?
If more people valued home above gold, this world would be a merry place.
Home is what grounds us in Tolkien's Fantasyland, a shared frame of reference that we can all relate to. It's why we spend the first 40 minutes of this trilogy in Bilbo's Hobbit hole, truly feeling the place and the dwarves who are welcomed inside. Of course, Bilbo's warm and cozy home is contrasted with the large and vast Erebor, which is currently inhabited by the largest and mightiest of beasts in Middle-earth. This is why the dwarves have invaded Bilbo's precious living space, a quick assembly before embarking on an impossible journey. And ultimately, it's this understanding of home that pushes Bilbo out the door, setting aside his comfort for those in need. The Battle of the Five Armies finds itself in an interesting point on this journey. The impossible has been achieved. The mountain is won, but Thorin does not receive the homecoming he expected. Those of whom the dwarves have hurt during their long road come marching to Erebor's gates, demanding compensation for Thorin opening the biggest can of worms imaginable. Their demands seem reasonable, but the mountain is a corruptible force, with the weight of its power and gold getting to Thorin's head. I mean, they don't call it the Lonely Mountain for nothing. This skirmish escalates into all-out war, until an army of Middle-earth's most vile creatures swarm to take the mountain for themselves. The conflicting parties unite against this far greater evil, and when things seem their most dire, Thorin charges to protect those who were at his door asking for help. It's a narrative circle, a complete mirror of Bilbo's dilemma at the beginning, just on a much larger scale. The story wouldn't be structured this way if this didn't matter. It matters. It's the only thing that matters, and every moment of every action beat should push towards this inevitable conclusion. How can our characters come together when they're on completely different battlefields? In an action sense, we never see the separate parties reaching out to one another. Bard never reacts to Thorn's charge, nor do the dwarves react to the women and elderly joining the fight. Even when we do focus in on our characters, like the skirmish on Ravenhill, you can feel the theme slip away as a Thorn and Azog rivalry takes over. And, once again, a great battle is driven by theme. It's molded by it. It twists and turns until they're inseparable. And with that comes the most important question. The question I've been building up to this entire video. How do you communicate this theme through action? I want to say thanks for watching. You know, it took a long time to make this video, and I'm so happy to share it with you all. There's more content coming throughout the rest of the summer, and if you want to support this channel and those videos, then I urge you to pledge $1 or $2 to my Patreon. You know, it's the best way to keep things running here. Also, follow my Twitter. You know, you can hear my thoughts on things, get updates on upcoming videos, and just interact with me in person. All well and good. And it's been a while, but I'll see you next week.